This is Jackie Helvey, and I'm here with Catherine Fray or Fry?
It's Fray.
Fray.
Fray, I say Fray like the band, and like 2 Gen Xers get it.
I don't get it. We're here at Lanz's in Carrboro, and Catherine is running for town council. And I first became aware of you during the Carrboro Comprehensive Task Force, and I got to say that I honestly thought you were a town employee when we were in those meetings, because you seemed like the leader of the group. I guess that was a volunteer.
Thank you. Yes, I was one of the co-chairs. I was a volunteer position.
Well, you did a great job. So now, did that play a role in you wanting to run for town council at all?
It did. I have been serving on the planning board for 11 years now.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Started in 2012. I've been the chair twice, and then I also co-chaired the Carrboro Connects project. And so I've been working with planning and zoning on a volunteer basis in Carrboro for over a decade. And I felt really good about getting the Carrboro Connects comprehensive plan passed. That was a huge deal for Carrboro. We have this new vision and a really clear plan that lays out our goals for supporting a whole variety of our values, but especially the 2 core values are racial equity and climate action. And we have all of the town activities centered around that plan now. It gives us very clear guidance for where we want to go as a town. We got a huge amount of input. I'll just stay on this topic a little bit longer. We did surveys, including a card mailed to every single address in Carrboro. We did in-person outreach. We did Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, because this was in the middle of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And in the end, when we tallied up all the responses, we heard from, uniquely, 7% of the residents of Carrboro. And that is unheard of for a town level engagement. It seems like, single digit number, but can you imagine fitting that many people in a room?
Right.
So the town actually ended up winning an award for their outreach, and the town staff, I'm not one of them, they were amazing in helping to make sure that outreach was able to happen under really stressful circumstances.
See, to me, 7% doesn't seem very high.
No, but it's usually, when you have usual town outreach is more like a 0.5% or 1% or a quarter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Boy, that's pathetic, isn't it? That more people in a community don't become involved in,
People have their daily lives to deal with, and so
yeah, but what's more important than where you live and the things that affect you, I mean, I know I'm singing to the choir or whatever.
I do think that the comprehensive plan was really important, so it mattered that we got out and talked to that many people, and that we made extra efforts to talk to communities we don't talk to a lot.
Right.
We did outreach to underserved communities all over the place, to our historically Black neighborhoods, to our Latinx community. We did outreach in 3 languages, right? To make sure that we're actually hearing from as many people as possible, from as representative a sample as possible, not just the folks who got time or childcare or the
usual suspects, right?
To show up at your standard public meeting at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
So coming out of that process, and I was like, okay, we got the comprehensive plan passed, and now a year's gone by. Right? It's got 5-year goals, and a year's gone by, and I'm like, oh wait. This is not actually, we're not executing on this as fast as I would wish, and I think as fast as a lot of the town would wish. So.
And why is that?
I think the council has got a lot on their plate. They've got a lot of different priorities. They are also, dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic and had to get through that. And I think also there was sort of a sense that they didn't quite have consensus on some of the items, like how to execute on them. Take, for instance, the discussion about the Greenway that's been happening recently.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes our council likes to wait until they've got a consensus before they move forward.
How long has that been going on? Like 20 years
like
or
20
something?
Years. So I think consensus is important, but sometimes when something speaks directly to the values of our community, it's also important to take the vote and move ahead. So
right.
I was looking at this and thinking, well, I guess I'm going to have to get out and push. If I given that I feel as strongly as I do about this plan, if I want it to happen, I need to keep helping make it happen.
Right.
And so that's the main reason why I'm running.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you.
And the fact that you've been on that board for so long, you pretty much know the score, and I find it sad, and I understand why people want taller buildings because it's, the density thing and everything. But I still hate to see houses like mine, my little 1,100 square foot house, being torn down, and some 5-story or however many story building being put there. I can't imagine that happening like where I live, where it's all single family housing, but at the same time, I guess it's necessary as long as people want to keep moving here and
Well,
stuff.
here's what I'd say. People want to keep moving here. And if we keep the status quo just as it is, then we know exactly what's going to happen. And it's that housing is going to get more expensive. And that little 1,100 square foot house is going to keep getting more expensive until it's not affordable anymore to you or to anybody
Well,
else.
it already isn't for
Right.
people like me.
And the other thing that happens is when housing's that expensive, then the people who get housing are the people who have cash. And they can come in and they can buy your house with cash, and they can tear it down, and they can build not a 5-story building, but they can build a 4,000 square foot house.
And that's what's happening too. I
Right.
see it all around my neighborhood, and it just boggles my mind. Who's living in these houses?
There's a lot of money sloshing around in the housing market right now. That's inequality for you, right? When you concentrate wealth, and at the top there are folks who have the money to do whatever they want,
Right.
and a lot of the rest of us are left out.
Yeah.
So that's our status quo. And also housing ages, right? Houses have a lifespan, and short of someone who's willing to put in tons of work to rehab a building, some houses are going to get torn down too, just because they're no longer livable. So between those two processes, housing changes in a town over time. It has to. So we don't have control over whether the town changes. It's going to. But we have control over how it changes. Can we put our finger on that scale and say, you know what, it matters to us that new housing is smaller or more affordable or more environmentally friendly? Or are we going to just sort of let the market rip and let capitalism do what it's going to do to our town if we don't get involved?
Right.
So that's what I see the role of planning in the town is, if we want our values to be reflected in how the town's built, we have to make our ordinance reflect that.
Right.
It's completely not it's absolutely natural to worry about what's going to happen to my house, what's going to happen to my neighborhood, is my garden going to be shaded, right? Because I live in a 1,400 square foot house, and I love having my garden there, and my neighbors are living in these really small houses that historically have been affordable. But if we don't do something, if we don't control the way that change happens in town, we're going to get uncontrolled change.
And
so
your
that's where the
garden is
density
going to be
comes in.
shaded, just like we were talking about when they build these tall structures. The people that are already there, that live in that area, they don't have sun for their garden anymore because of the shadow of this huge entity.
For what it's worth, when we do our review process in the town, we do tons of studies. We do environmental studies, we do rainwater studies, we do shade studies and noise studies and light studies. It's not clear to me that doing all of those studies actually gives us a better outcome, because of the way that property rights law works in North Carolina, there are only certain criteria that we can use to say, no, you have to do something different. There is what's called by right construction, which means that if you own a piece of property, you have a right to build something on it and to make use of that property. We can't say, you know what, we have decided as a town that we prefer your lot to be an environmental preserve, and so you can't build a house on it. It's not an option that we have.
Right.
And so again, we can't control whether people build on a lot. We can help control what people can build on a lot and make sure that that's again going to be affordable and green. I think also a lot of people think that hey, if we're building a 12-story building downtown, does that mean that my neighborhood is going to have a 5 or a 6 or a 10-story building in it if I live in a little neighborhood? I don't think that's the most likely outcome. Generally speaking, we do have dimensional rules that say what you can build. So loosening those a little bit is not the same as saying let it rip.
Right.
And in small neighborhoods, what we want to have happen when we talk about density in a little neighborhood of small single-family houses, we're talking about going from one single-family home to two, or from one single-family home to a little quadplex apartment building. These are still small neighborhood-scaled buildings. They're just denser.
Right.
And what we're hoping to avoid, if we say, well, we really want to make sure that we have big setbacks and that we control the sizes, of the buildings so that we don't have a big apartment building. If you're not careful, what you end up with is a big single-family home instead that meets all the dimensional requirements, but is never going to be affordable again.
Right. Well, that's interesting and enlightening and sort of sad,
Yeah, we're sitting right next to a lot over here where I saw what happens with Carrboro's current ordinance. It's the in our court, right back through the trees, the big modern houses behind O2. That developer was a first-time developer in Carrboro, and he came to the planning board and he said, I would like to build an apartment building. I want 13 units and I want 4 of them to be permanently affordable. And we said, that's amazing, go to it. And then he hit our planning process, which puts a few things. It's expensive. He has to do a ton of reviews. He's paying fees. He's doing staff time. He's supporting meetings. He's doing outreach. He's doing engineering studies. From the point of view, someone will hand us a concept plan, which is, under law, the concept plan, and we've actually gotten one of these, can be like a crayon drawing. And we had a homeowner who got caught up in a little loophole in the ordinance, and they had to submit a concept plan for their tiny house, and they gave us a drawing on a piece of paper. And that's
funny.
supposed to be a concept plan. He brings us a concept plan and we say, well, what do you know about what rent's going to be? And he's like, I don't even have an engineer yet. Help me out here.
Right.
Then he has to go through at least 2 different rounds of review with staff. And he has to do a bunch of public meetings. So we set up a public meeting and everybody from the whole neighborhood comes in and says, this is too dense, I don't like this, this is gonna, be a problem for our neighborhood. It's sort of like the feeling that you have about your neighborhood. Everybody has that. And so whenever anyone builds anything, you get sort of a pile on of folks who are worried. And he listened to people and he said, okay, well, he wanted to accommodate people's concerns. So he said, okay, I'm gonna pull it back from the street, I'm gonna make it shorter, I'm going to squish it this way, I'm going to squish it that way. And then he has to go back through review with that again.
Oh, wow.
It takes a long time. He was
and
in
a
that
lot of
process
money, I would think, also.
Over a year. And you can see what's happening. The time's ticking along. His funding has a clock on it. His costs are going up. We push and we push and we push through and this is all good, town engagement process. But it's costing him money. And it finally got to the point where he came back and he said, I can't afford this anymore.
Oh, wow.
I have to do whatever I can do without further review. And he looked at the ordinance with staff and he said, I'm going to have to build single-family homes. And so instead of 13 apartments, 4 of them affordable, which is what he wanted, we got 6 $800,000 houses.
Oh, wow.
And that filter, that process of taking a project that can be affordable.
That's over here?
That's it right there.
Oh, wow.
And turning it into something that can never be affordable. That wasn't the developer coming in and saying, I want to make the maximum amount of money possible.
He was doing the exact opposite.
He wanted to do the opposite, and our ordinance pushed him in a less affordable direction.
Wow.
I don't know if he'll ever develop in Carrboro again. So I'm not trying to claim that every developer is an altruist, right? No, the average developer wants to make money.
Right.
They want to make a ton of money.
And they can't make it off of affordable housing.
This is not necessarily true. It's not that they're going to make money on affordable units, but if you structure they're going to follow their incentives. And so if you make the incentives, well, listen, if you build affordable housing, then we will, or if you build densely, or if you do other things that are going to make it more affordable, then we will also allow you to build more market rate units. Usually that's the trade-off, and that's where you get the 12-story building in Chapel Hill that we were talking about. It's, to get 3 stories of affordable, maybe he couldn't afford to build 3 stories of affordable and 3 of market rate, but maybe if he can build 6 stories of market rate, then he can afford to do 3 stories of affordable. And then these are just round numbers, it's not a particular project. But so if you set the ordinance up right, you're providing incentives to the developer to say, listen, you'll make more money overall if you take the hit on the affordable units, because we will trade you something else that you want. It's always a trade-off. But if we push too hard, if we don't think through the unintended consequences, then we don't get the affordable housing at all, which
Right.
I personally think is worse than making the trade.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So after 11 years on the planning board, I've seen, I think, just about every way that we can fail to build affordable housing. And sometimes that's a developer who doesn't want to play ball.
Right.
Sometimes it's
Do you find that that's the case most often?
I've run into some developers who want to game the process for sure, but I don't think that's the norm. And I've also run into some developers who are willing to take a financial hit in order to make it happen, and that's also not the norm.
Right.
Most developers, like most people, want to follow the financial incentives in front of them, and if we set those up right for the town, then it should be a negotiation where we each get something that we want.
Right. Well, it sounds like you have a good plan. Now, if people want to, when is the voting? When's the election or early voting or whatever?
Early voting starts on October 19th.
Wow, that's soon.
Yeah, it's 30 days. 30 days from today is
Wow.
when early voting starts. And election day is November 7th.
Okay. So we want everybody to go out and vote for Catherine Fray, who knows what she's talking about.
Thank you, Jackie.
You know, it's nice that there are informed candidates, that it's not just people who, you know, say, oh, I'm going to go run for office. I want to be on TV once a week or whatever.
You know, it's easy to say that you have all the answers, and it's easy to say that you share the same values as Carrboro, because, you know, Carrboro, lots of folks have these values. Those
Right.
are good values. We want housing to be affordable. We want our environment to be protected. We want our town to be fair and open to people. But it takes a little bit of extra preparation to be willing to say, listen, I'm going to suggest that in order to do that, I need to convince you that we need to do something, that we need to change how we're doing things in order to keep Carrboro somewhere where everybody can live.
Right. Well, that's great, and I wish you the best of luck. I have
you.
confidence that you're going to get elected and help make things better for Carrboro. I mean,
Thank you
that's
so
the
much.
final goal, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.